I'll say I feel very confident that I'm terrible at technology, but Ernie and social media technology is not. That's not his gift. I need to be wiser.
I don't know. Did it go live on that?
Yes, it says it's live.
Are you guys going to ask questions? Y'all are on Zoom with us. Bear with us. We are. Sweet.
All right.
All right. I don't know how to jump on this thing. So you want to just introduce what we're doing here and let everybody know Facebook Live and on here?
Yes.
We got some chats going on. Okay. Sweet.
All right, so you're live from the Wealth Without Wall Street office. We have an honored guest today, Nelson Nash. I'll let you guys guess which one he is. He has only shared with us 100 times over the last 10 years. It's too few we've not taken advantage of the fact that you live here in Birmingham with us. So thank you for coming today and hopefully agree to come back. David told me as long as I say free lunch, you can come.
He's correct.
We used to
But
do
next time we get better traffic, there's an accident out there at 459 and take traffic after road.
Yeah, I'll call ahead on that next time. I struggled with that on my way in this morning. I don't know if you guys heard it. It only took me 45 minutes.
Anyway, we're here.
I digress from that. But have any of you ever got a chance to see Nelson live? We used to do an hour workshop that we used to host. Did you ever get a chance to do that? It was one of the best things that I ever did. Was I went to that. It was July of 2009, and I got to hear him live. It was a 2-day thing. 2 hours the first day, 8 hours, and I got to hear his beautiful things about what's going on in the world that I never had heard. And it was what opened my eyes up to what we all know now is infinite banking and how we're using it. Clearly, he'd been doing it for quite a while, but it was really neat to hear the stories and some of the things that we always. Sometimes we like to dig into are the practical things of like, how do you use it to buy a piece of real estate? Or how do you use it to pay for your kids' college? Or, those are the things that some of us are doing. But it's the bigger period over time of how does this impact the whole economy? How is this going to impact generations, right? So we start thinking past. So Nelson, how many grandchildren do you have?
10,
How many great-grandchildren do you have?
9, and 10 on the way.
And how many insurance policies do you guys own on all of those grands and greats?
So every time a grand was born, we crank up $2,000 premium. The parents would crank up $2,000 premium, and the other grandparents. So each of them had usually 2 to 3 policies on all of them. And when the grapes came along, same.
Yeah.
So,
And the purpose of all of that was what?
and how to be a banker, let's see a bank in their life.
And so I know many of you probably resonate with this, that you probably have to take out lots and lots of loans from commercial banks over your years. And I think about his great-grandchildren and hopefully my children. If I do it right over the next 5 to 10 years, by the time they get to that age, that I could insulate them from that whole transaction. So I think like those are some of the stories that you heard when we were in that seminar that I hope maybe, through several lunches and things like this, again, it seems sort of warm right now because I'm talking to you guys are all listening. But I want it just to be more of us just sitting around eating and talking about the things that matter, and using somebody who has lots of wisdom to maybe get them.
This is a great idea because I have absolutely nothing to do. Yeah, I can't travel anymore. Neuropathy of the feet, congestive heart failure of the heart, macular degeneration of the eyes. Other than that, I'm in real good shape.
But you still ride your bicycle.
David won't let me.
They won't let you get on the bike anymore? No more bicycle. Well, in February, we host Nelson Nash Institute hosts a group of advisors from all over North America, and it's here in Birmingham. And they have a movie a documentary that's been done on Nelson that they're going to be showing. So it's going to be pretty cool. We're going to be able to get copies of that? They're going to be purchasable?
That's all in David's hands, and I can't do a thing. But whatever he wants to do with it is up to him.
All right, well, I'm going to ask the first question. I know it's shocking to Joey, but then I'm going to shut up, which is going to be shocking to all of you. But I had a question. I called you about this earlier this week, but I thought it'd be good to kind of get it live. So one of our clients have been looking at one of the illustrations that you're sending and had some questions about what was going to happen in the 70s and 80s and 90s, what that looked like. And I didn't think there was anybody better to answer that question since we have somebody who's in their 80s who has a policy that you bought your State Farm policy when?
59.
1959. How many years ago was that?
That's
60?
That's complicated. Yeah. Very particular.
So he has a policy that we probably all have looked at on ourselves. We looked at our policy and thought, okay, what's it going to look like 50, 60 years down the road? He's experiencing that. So I would, if you don't mind sharing, because you used to share it live, I don't share it here, just kind of how that policy is performing in relationship to what you're putting in.
Well, some background here. When my wife and I got married 66 years ago, we made a commitment 2 months before we got married that we would always tithe 10% to our church, otherwise no deal. Now another thing is to save at least 10% of whatever you make. Well, I bought this State Farm policy, just roughly $400 a year. Now, you have to understand that there's a difference in money back in 1952 and now. Do y'all have any idea? Okay, I worked my way through college, part-time jobs and ROTC. Had to go on active duty for 2 years with the Air Force as a result of that. Do y'all know what a second lieutenant base pay was in 1952? $213.75 a month every month, whether you needed it or not. $42 food allowance. Now, we got along very well on that compared with everybody else. What happened during my lifetime? Bankers inflated the money supply big time. The definition of inflation is just an increase in the money supply. Well, it's such a long, drawn-out process that very few folks really understand it and understand why it came about. But here's the thing, what it amounts to is the banking function in life is in the hands of the wrong people. If you look closely at what is happening in the banking world and how it affects you and me, it is evil compounded. Anybody that would lend money that doesn't exist is evil. That's a lie. But yet, that's what happens. But people have no earthly idea that this is going on. Anyway, when I started out in life there, at 388 was the premium, the State Farm policy when I was back in my forestry days, Eastern North Carolina. Now, I bought that from my next older brother. Now, he knew full well that I was putting $600 a month, $600 a year into an accumulation plan with invested the first services. Okay? All right, $600 going there, $400 going to state fund policy. That's 10,000. Now I was making $10,000 a year at that time, 10%. You know, time goes on, and this state farm policy gets to be more and more substantial. All right, I'm a forester by education. I've always been around real estate, timber is real estate, so I indulged in real estate as time went by. And as long as I stuck to real estate, timber, that I knew something about, I made money on the deal. It was when I got involved in development of real estate that the wheels came off. Do y'all know what interest rates on a 90-day policy, 90-day loan to the bank was in 1979? Have any idea? 8%. Now that's prime. Y'all know what prime rate means? That's the best rate they charge their best customer. Yeah. Used to be folks like General Motors. We can't say that anymore because it's government money. Yeah. Now, look, I've been teaching these two books all over the United States and Canada for almost 20 years. And the subject of prime rate is always involved in the presentation. I have asked groups, is anybody here prime rate at a bank? I met one person, and I'm quite sure he was lying. He was listening to the gopher at the bank. You see, when you go to a bank, you're not seeing a banker. You're seeing a gopher at the bank. They have high titles and low pay. I've several looking at the funds. All right, I'm not client either. I'm not prime either. I pay 4.5 over, 9.5% interest. Well, 9.5% interest on 90-day loans. I made money in the real estate business. Then along came 1980 and 81. What happened to interest rates? Do y'all know? Prime peak at 21.5. 4.5 added to that. How many third grade arithmetic? That's 23% interest. 23% interest times $500,000. You get an idea what a shock that was. It was worse than that. I was dealing with partnerships. I always had other folks involved in these things because, look, in all candor, if you don't have somebody to share things with, you don't have much. Never mind. You got it? Yeah. All right, so here was this big name lawyer here in Alabama. Principal went to the firm. He owned 5% of this project. Guys, he bankrupted on us. Well, what's that mean? Well, the rest of us partners got to cough up to buy out his share. His bank's still in. That cost me another $300,000. Now, it was at that time that I discovered that thought this thing through, that what's being left out is the commander of the banking function. That I was paying this huge amount of interest to the banking business. I could get the money from 3 different life insurance companies, 5, 6, and 8% interest. Only thing limited how much I could get to is how much you put in the policy. So forth. Well, by everyday terms, back in 35 years ago or so, I was paying $18,000 a year premium, and that was kind of spectacular compared to both of them. But look, there's only one pool of money out there, as a matter of handling the money. And the bankers are the problem. They have created this horrible situation all over the world. Well, I saw that if I upped my premiums big time, I could create a pool of money that I could, you can't do all this at one time. You got to do a little at a time. But it snowballs as time goes by. And I need to increase premiums and one by one get rid of debts that are out there. Well, it only took me 13 years, but so what? Remember, I'm a forester. I think 70 years down the road, well, good Lord, I'm almost 88 now. I think 70 years down the road. Plan if you're going to live forever. Live if you're going to die is a pretty good idea. All right. So, planning ahead there, it took me that 13 years to get rid of those folks. Well, that meant that I had to get enough money in the life insurance that I could borrow to pay off the snakes and dragons. And then pay off policy loan. Well, that's all in the past tense. That got paid off. And it startled me how fast I paid off the debts. Once you get rid of the debts, go somewhere else. Because it's just a simple fact that an account building is much more efficient than an account that's coming down. Now, I meant to wear my niece's sweatshirt, but I couldn't find it. Mary said it was in the laundry. Anyway, there's an institution called the Big One Leases Institute out in Alabama. Now, it is not part of Auburn. It's a private think tank, and it's worldwide influence.
They just wanted to be a good company, though.
Yeah, but it's an outgrowth of Foundation for Economic Education. And I got affiliated with Foundation for Economic Education back in 1957, I'm sorry. FEE got started by Leonard E. Reed, Henry Hazlitt, and 2 or 3 other guys back in 46, and I got acquainted with it in 1957. That became a passion. And if it weren't for the Austrian school of thought in the economic world, we would not be talking. This concept would not have been invented. That's the roots of it all. That it's individual thought, not group think, whatever. There are 3 schools of thought out there in the economic world. There's the Keynesian fools that have got us in the world's worst condition ever. There's the Chicago school. Now, that was Milton Friedman. Well, everybody considered him to be a free market economist, but that wasn't the case at all. He was a monetarist. There had to be a constant increase in the money supply, otherwise our economy would stagnate. We'd be in a heap of trouble. If you read David Stockman's 719-pager called The Great Devolution, you will find out that it was Milton Friedman that convinced Nixon to come off the gold standard back in 1971, I believe it was, or so. Well, look what happened as a result. Okay? Only the Austrians have got it right. It's bottom-up thinking. It's individual thinking.
Do you guys know what Austrian economics is? Have you guys heard that term? Anybody researched or read anything?
Do it, MISES, Mises, just go to Mises.org and you'll learn all about it. Bookmark also bookmark FEE.org.
That's one of the.
Yeah, now Henry, I knew Henry. Okay, Henry was one of the co-founders of FEE, but Leonard Reed was my personal friend and mentor. I used to have him down here to Birmingham every year to lecture and so forth. Well, we're back to my state farm policy there now. As time went by, I made 3 real good timberland investments from cash value of that policy. They were all spectacular. Well, there are no policy at this point.
25-point turns, get out.
There are no loans. Now, the dividends on the state farm policy are now 10 times the premium.
Say that one more time.
10 times the premium.
So you think about what you're putting in your policy today. And think about the dividend being 10 times that.
Well, what that means for us is that if I paid that $388 premium, that's what it is. The cash pay increases, let's see, immediately $13,000. How would anybody quit a policy like that, huh?
But that's a question. That's a practical question that we get a lot. Is like we think in terms of the typical retirement, right? We're going to work, we're going to save money, and then we're going to retire, and then we're not going to save any more money. We're just going to start spending it. But if you knew the premium that you're putting in was going to create a 10 times multiple, would you have any issue with putting it in?
Well, that's just an example of it. And back there several years ago, I do not need the money, but I changed the dividend election to come to me in cash for 4 years. Now, at the end of that 4 years, I got a notice from State Farm the next year that, look, send us your Social Security number again. We want to make sure that there's no clerical errors anywhere. Because when you get that next dividend of $10,000, that's going to be taxable, and we're going to send you a 1099 at the end of the year. Well, y'all noticed the verbiage when I responded to them. I said, no, you will not. You will change the dividend election to buying paid acquisition insurance again, regardless of my insurability, and I'm uninsurable. Yeah. So at the end of that 4 years, I had absolutely nothing in that policy. Well, I paid premium since that time, of course, by all means. And so let's see, I've got less than $3,500 in that policy.
Meaning your basis.
Yeah, how
Like
much?
how much you put into it.
$3,500. Yeah,
Right.
How much cost? Okay. Well, the cash pay is $123,000 at this point.
But who's counting, right?
Yeah.
Now you get a little bit frustrated that you were not putting in.
Well, yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. See, my brother that sold me that policy, you doggone good world. I was paying $600 a year to invest in diversified service. Why didn't you tell me to put all $1,000 into the State Farm policy? And it's because of the way people think. It's because of the way they're taught. And you all go to college. Do you ever get taught any of this stuff in college? If they did teach you anything, what would they teach you about life insurance? World's worst place to put money. And the truth is it's 180 degrees opposite. But the reason that this goes on is that people don't understand there's a banking function out there that controls the educational community. You don't know that, do you? So you go to my website, infinitebanking.org. Now, there's a resources tab. Now, you click on the resources tab, down it drops all the items that are there. And one of them is a reading list. And there's about, I think, 285 books on that reading list. And if you read them all, you got one PhD in Austrian economics and one PhD in history. There are more history books than there are economics books. You can't study economics without studying history. And what people have no earthly idea about is that there's no way you can understand the last 120 years of the existence of this world without understanding Cecil Rhodes. Anybody ever heard of Cecil Rhodes? What a surprise. Anybody ever heard of a Rhodes Scholarship? Now, what is your impression of a Rhodes Scholarship? What is your reaction when you hear somebody say, he's a Rhodes Scholar? What is your reaction? I need a response.
Prestigious and scholar.
Must be pretty smart.
When I think of Rhodes Scholarship, I want to throw up. Evil personified. people have no earthly idea what happened in 1880 or thereabout. There was this philosopher in England at one of the prestigious schools there. His name was John Ruskin. He cut a wide swath in the intellectual community. Among other things, he was a big-time art critic, but he influenced Cecil Rhodes big time, and Cecil Rhodes, Alfred Milner. Anybody ever heard of Alfred Milner? Again, what a surprise. Anybody ever heard of Nathaniel Rothschild? All right, bingo, we got something going there. Then there's another guy named W.T. Stead. The fifth guy, I can't come up with his name right now. Y'all have to forgive me for being feeble at 88. Okay. But anyway, Cecil Rhodes saw that there had to be this secret society that would take over the world. The British Empire was the means of getting this done. And the British Empire was at its peak at that particular time. Now, any of y'all ever heard of the Boer War, B-O-E-R? We're talking about the late 1880s, and we're talking about 1901, 1902. The Boers were Dutch farmers living in the southern part of Africa. They've been that 200 years, good Lord. But you see, here come the British with this idea that all of Africa should be British. Okay. But the spark plug of all this was Cecil Rhodes. Well, have y'all ever heard of Kimberley Mines? Diamonds? Kimberley Mines?
We have heard of diamonds, yes.
Yeah. De Beers?
Yes.
Okay. Cecil Rhodes?
Jared, I've heard of Jared too.
There's also gold, big time. Well, now, let me ask you a question. If you're the king of the mountain, you're it, okay? What is your biggest fear?
Getting pushed down the mountain.
Push down the mountain. Yeah. They don't fall. Somebody will take over.
Right.
All right. Now, look, do y'all know how old Germany is as we know it today? 1871. 1871. Before that, it was fragmented big time. There's Bavaria, there was Prussia, there was the Hanseatic area, and so forth. 3 or 4 others. They all came together. You need to look that up. You Google it and it'll help out. Anyway, it became the nation as we know it today. Well, they were coming on very strong with high quality products and low prices, threatening the British Empire. Well, how do you combat this? Do you want to increase your abilities, or do you want to tear those other folks down? What is human nature, guys? Yeah. You got to get rid of them blankety blank Germans. Okay. All right. Now, in order to do so, your first thing you got to have is lots of money. Well, where's the money? Diamonds, gold, Kimberley, and dang Boers. All right. Now, you read the story of, there's several books out there that's necessary to understand all this. But when you see what happened in that war, unbelievable. Nash is an English name. My name, Nash, is an English name. We've never been to England. I'm scared of the language barrier. but we've been to Europe many, many times. But back in the days, we had telephone books. They tell me that the London telephone directory had page after page after page after Nash's. When I see what the British are doing in this world, I want to change my name. It's not pretty at all. People have no earthly idea. And that's because of the guy, Deputy Stead, that I was telling you about a while ago. Newspaper guy and so forth. Propaganda. You know, I was a teenager during World War II. And the propaganda that we were fed was unbelievable. But, you know, we were taught that the Germans were the guys that put out all the propaganda stuff and so forth. But the British propaganda machine made the Nazi propaganda machine look pale. All right. So you got to have money first in order to have have power. To have power, you got to have a war. Okay. Now, to have a war, you got to have money first. And then you got to have the will of the people. You got to have propaganda big time. You ready? All right, 1902. Now this is going to get real complicated. This is real high class arithmetic, okay? The war is over in World War in 1902. Do y'all know what happened at Jekyll Island, Georgia in 1910? Anybody? I know they teach y'all this in school, y'all just forgot it yet.
Federal Reserve. That's what it's Federal Reserve.
The Rockefellers, the mortgage part of the rest of his folks. JP.
Ron Morgan's.
JP.
None of that money came down to me, I can assure you.
No. Anyway, the Rockefellers, the mortgage, the Warburg. Y'all ever heard of Paul Warburg?
Yeah.
Warburg was German. But look, folks, these international folks, nations mean nothing to them. Nothing. There's a puppet masters, and the puppet masters, you don't see them. They're working behind the scenes. This is a whole idea that Rhodes came up with back there in the 1880s. Secret societies. Okay. All right. Now, Warburg, as I told you, he's straight out of the firm of Koch Kuhn Loeb here in the United States. And he was straight out of the house also of Rothschild. Well, so in 1910, he just happened to be in, end quote, in America. And he just happened to become an American citizen. And he just happened to be at Jekyll Island, Georgia, with these other guys. What a coincidence. You know? He was the author of the document that became the Federal Reserve, which has as much to do with the federal government as the Federal Express does. Absolutely.
But it dictates a lot.
Yeah. But you see, we haven't been given the reason for that particular time of it happening. See, there were two attempts at a central bank. Mr. Hamilton was the first guy, and that one came apart, and the second one came apart as a result of Mr. What's his name from Tennessee? Anyway, Americans wanted no part of the central bank. You got to have propaganda out there. You got to put fear in the hearts of people. You see, from personal experience, I know that everything that goes on in Washington, D.C. is based on fear. I'm leading the movement to change the name of the town to Fear Factory. Yeah. They create a problem in people's minds, and then they come up with a solution to solve the problem that they created. And everybody believes that stuff. Good Lord. But it's happening because they control the education.
All right, Nelson. I do want to continue talking about the Fear Factory, but maybe at another time.
Okay, but I gotta get to one more point and I'll quit, okay?
All right, well, I got questions. I got to ask you some questions.
Go ahead. But just to check you, okay?
All right, I'll come back in the gym.
1910. All right. In 1913, the document became law. The last week of December. Well, next week is 1914, isn't it? Well, tell me what happened 7 months later, please. No. World War I. You got to have money first. You have to have an unending supply of money. And the World War I started. And we've been the bloodiest century of all time. Oh, look at what happened in 1880. You need to study this stuff. Okay, next question.
All right, on a lighter note.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to talk about blood, but maybe another time. Jay Elliott has actually put out this question. So Jay, shout out to you.
Yeah.
He said, what would you do differently now knowing what you know now? Either sooner, differently, whatever. What would you do differently now what you know? I didn't mean to stump you, okay?
Well, that's a hard
This is
thing
an
to do
opinion.
because you can't undo what had happened in the past. You have to go from where you are. Any all golfers?
Yes.
Joey, no, you're not a golfer. You
Well,
I have golf clubs.
I used to play regularly once a year, but I'm 28 games behind right now. But I do know this, you got to hit the ball from where it lies. You're up on the tee, you hit the ball, it went on in the rough, so.
I can move it a little bit.
Yeah, you have to go from where you are. But, you know, if I've ever been taught all this sort of stuff, the first thing I did, problem I had was trying to believe it, because we've been fed so much nonsense that's out there. It's absurd what goes on out there, but most of what you see is called news is not news at all. It's propaganda. It's lies. And then when it comes to things economic, there's totally lies out there. That the banking function should be at the UNB level. It can be done totally by free contract with other free people. That's all life insurance is. You create a microcosm. You create an aquarium. You don't care what's going on out there. See, when you get the banks out of your life, it's such a pleasant, peaceful, stress-free way of life that, you know, you got to experience it to believe it.
So you would what would you do differently based on that?
Well, who would have been out there to tell me this?
Just yourself.
Well,
Back to the teacher.
you got to start hunting. Excuse me. Big time congestion problem the last 3 weeks. Sorry about that, but every once in a while this will happen. Well, back there in my forestry days, as I write straight out of the Air Force, I'm 23 years old, 24 at the most. So I saw that there's absolute nonsense going on out there in the way of socialism. And that's what led me to get acquainted with the Foundation of Economic Education. And so I started pursuing that understanding, and it became a passion. And from that, these other things just evolved. So I wish that there'd been somebody out there that could understand this, but they didn't. When you plow new ground out there, it's kind of painful. They're trying to find somebody to listen to. So I don't really know how to answer that. There is no pill that you can take to do this. You got to start in a direction. And so that's why I named it infinite banking concept. How in the world do you define infinite, huh? There's no way. It's impossible to define infinite. because that's what it's all about. And the more you see you didn't see.
What questions do you have for Nelson? You came a long way. Some of you didn't. I don't think thought Joe was going to buy you lunch, so I felt real bad that he sat over here and ate 75 wings. He could have shared with everybody, but he didn't. What questions do you have?
It won't hurt long.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, we've got one. Let me get back up to it. From Grant, Sports and Trooper. He was asking, Nelson, you talk a lot about the way that you think and the need or the reality that we finance everything that we buy.
Sure.
The question is, when we have our policies and are in a position of cash value, how do we decide what is worthy of taking a loan for? What kind of things should we use our policy for? What kind of things should we not use?
In reality, everything that you buy, you're financing it. You either pay interest or you give it up. There are no exceptions. In other words, banking is. You can't get away from it. Richard Cantillon in Europe 300 years ago isolated that concept. But, who knows about Richard Cantillon, huh?
Only because you told me about him.
Well, shucks, what's his name? That Mises will tell you all about it. That's why I learned it. But you got to study. But colleges don't provide this sort of stuff at all. They wouldn't dare. Because, you see, they're part of the problem. Takes a big explanation there that we probably don't need to go into right now, but it's true. Russ, you remember when you went through the seminar, wasn't Andy Sapa there from Perth, Australia?
Yeah, I remember.
Andy Sapa was a 16-year-old kid. He'd never been to school in his life. He just took a test. They gave him a diploma. Well, one of my very good friends is a Spanish teacher at Stanford University, Kelly Jensen. She grew up in the same town we did, Athens, Georgia. She started college when she was 15. Decided she wanted to become a PhD in Spanish. And so when doing graduate work and PhD work, she would do one semester in Athens, Georgia, one semester in Buenos Aires, and back and forth all the way through and so forth. Brilliant young lady. Anyway, she was going through the seminar at that time, and he was little Andy Sapa. Every time we had a coffee break, he was working the crowd, picking their brains. And so got around to Dr. Jensen. Dr. Jensen, where should I go to college? She says, don't bother. Travel and read. It's absurd how we're going about education. It's got all of the emphasis on social activities and bricks and mortar and stuff like that. Look, the ability to get educated out there is unbelievable today. Just take, for instance, Foundation for Economic Education over there in Atlanta. It used to be in Irvington, New York, but everything that my mentor, Leonard Reed, ever wrote is on the internet there. It doesn't cost you a dime. But who's ever heard of Leonard Reed?
You got any more over there, Ernie?
Yeah, I've got a Leonard Reed quote on my desktop.
All right, what was that one?
It's about becoming being life's primary purpose.
Yeah.
And the end of that is education.
Yes.
Self-education.
Yes.
So on
Leonard was the most educated man I ever met in my life. He had no degrees from anywhere. Henry Hazlitt, that you just picked up that while ago, Henry had no degrees from anywhere. Herbert Spencer, years ago before that in England, he had no degrees from anywhere. But those three made a huge impact on this world, big time. Well, the ability to have access to educational information was minuscule back in those days compared to what it is now. But look at what we're doing. the cost of a diploma is going higher and higher, and the quality is going the other way. Well, that's predictable when you come up with a top-down type of thinking. You see, the flood tide broke back there in the time I was in college. I was in college 48 through 52. And so this is the end of World War II. And here's all these soldiers and sailors and whatever getting off of active duty. I've forgotten how many million there were. And the socialists who were in charge at that time said, oh, that's going to wreck the economy. We can't absorb all these people in the regular economy. So we got to have some means to transition them over a period of time. Let's send them all to college. In addition to that, we'll increase the intellectual capital in this country. We'll kill two birds with one stone. And so they created the GI Bill. There were more GIs in college at the time I was there than any other time. Now, those guys lived high on the hog compared to us peons. They had a stipend to live on. It wasn't something to write home about. They drove automobiles and so forth. We walked or bicycles if we had them. I had two jobs, part-time jobs in addition to ROTC and so forth. Anyway, as a result of this, the diplomas, the colleges became diploma mills. Now, if you go to LouRockwell.com, Lou Rockwell is the guy that got the Mises Institute started down at Auburn. And it's an outgrowth of the Foundation for Economic Education. It's been there 35 years now. But when you go to LouRockwell.com, up at the top, there's a button, that tab for the authors. Click on the authors, and there'll be 200 names or so. Drop down there and pick out 81 names, and there's everything the guy wrote. Tom DiLorenzo is one of my real good friends. He's an economics professor at Loyola in Baltimore, and he's written extensively about the effect of the GI Bill. Well, anybody know who Walter E. Williams is? All right, Walter's a personal friend. I've been knowing Walter over 33 years, and he's written big time about this. He says, half the kids in college have never been there. No, it's a total farce. Well, it's created more problems than anything else.
We all know those guys. For
Yeah.
reals, you know. We went to school with them.
Well, with the, I heard a stat the other day that, with the amount of student loan debt that exists out there, percentage of student loan debt, obviously, which is funded by us taxpayers via the government, how much of it is in default?
Sure. Well, of course it is.
51%.
Is it really? It's more than 50.
Yeah, 51% of the student loan debt, which is like the second largest asset, I think, on the government's books right now. How high is in default?
Josh said he had a question.
Yes, Josh.
So
Thank you.
what about really low interest rate loans, such as a 0% car loan? Would that make sense to borrow from your policy, or would it make sense to take that money from the bank at zero?
I would never do business somewhere else at all. Because you want to build your system that's always growing. Always growing. Uninterrupted growth. And then you're becoming your own banker. Banking is, whether you admit it or not.
So
And
Nelson,
so all this 0% interest stuff out there, that's coming from the evil bankers. I'm telling you about that. They control your life. You see, one of the first things you got to do to get people to be subservient is poison their mind. All right.
You're talking to a former banker, so I
I
understand. I understand.
Well, you're a banker or you are a gopher.
I'll go for it.
You see, you see, I'm a forester. We had more courses in classification than you can shake a stick at. Dendrology, the study of classification of trees, it lasted all year long. There are at least 6 other courses involving classification. Now, if you classify things correctly, they get changed. So, go
And Walter Williams. Just so you know, Walter Williams wanted to reach the Black Hairs
Yes.
Academy. So,
Yes, sir. He is more fun.
he's one of my favorite
Yeah.
people to listen to. He's a genius.
All right, my son, was a West Pointer, did 6 years of artillery, then went to medical school. Both of them became White House physicians. Looked after scumbag trio, their tipper delivery. Anyway, anyway, Barry lived in Fairfax, which is right next door there to, George Mason. That's where Walter, right? Anyway, so Walter wrote a real good piece, endorsement for my section about, equipment financing and so forth. Anyway, I had him and talked with him several times before, but anyway, we got an appointment with, Barry and I got an appointment with Barry's my son. Got an appointment with Walter just to jaw and have some good fun. Anyway, so after about 40 minutes of talking about the various Sunday things that were dear to our hearts, Walter turned to Barry and says, "Tell me again, what kind of doctor are you?" Barry handed him his card, White House position. Walter looked at that thing, he says, "He hadn't offered you any cigars, has he?"
Ernie, did you have some other questions?
Yeah, we got some questions. Nelson, I think it would be good. I don't know if our community is connected to a lot of resources from your institute, other than the things that we're putting out, but there's things like the Laura Morphy report, banknotes,
Yeah,
your personal library.
Out monthly, bank notes is out there monthly, and we got some very, very good feedback from what occurred this year.
And how do we get those?
Well,
What are they for and
we
how do
go
we
to
get them?
mailing lists and so forth, with David. But anyway, Ron Griggs he's gonna be a superstar. He has quite an article in the current issue of banknotes. That's our monthly newsletter. All you gotta do is go to our website and it's right there. Click it on. Very, very complicated.
Is that the Nelson Nash Institute?
Yeah, just resources, you can go down to banknotes and there you go.
We can start posting those in the Wealth Council
Sure.
for everybody.
We're in the business of education. That is all.
What other questions do you guys have?
I think of a long time ago, and I need to do more of it, but I would bring my daughter to functions to let them learn, because I think most of us, who here has kids, like the things that we're learning today and hearing about, just not stuff. I mean, like when I was in high school, what was the next step? It was to go to college, right? And you're listening to Nelson talk about one, he has an education that believes in teaching constantly, but to hear that concept of college not necessarily being the absolute must for our children is contrary to culture. I mean, if you were to tell people that you're sitting next to as you're watching your kid's sporting event that you're contemplating not sending your kid to college, they would look at you.
I say that all the time, people think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But
That's right.
to me, the
If
thing
it
that
bothers you, you got a problem.
That's right.
but education starts now. It starts constantly. So, my wife's a dentist. You couldn't be a dentist without having gone to college. But a lot of us have careers and businesses that are there skills that maybe we learn, probably influencing, right? This is what we learned. But I mean, some of our jobs didn't require those things, and helping us like figure out what our kids would want to do. To me, that's why I take this information, I think of it, and not say, well, I have to follow this rule of thumb.
See, I told y'all something about the Boer War. I never knew what the Boer War was about in the first of this year. You should always be learning. But I had heard about it, and so I decided to start learning about it. Golly, here was this fantastic interview with between Lou Rockwell and Dr. Judge Denson, down at, Opelika, about these two books. The one was The Hidden Secrets of the Beginning of World War I, and the other was Prolonging the Agony, how the war lasted 3.5 years longer, and it was no reason for it at all, other than the puppet masters like that. See, what people don't understand is the people I'm talking about that are evil out there, you don't see them. We hear about Soros, right? He's 2 rungs down the ladder. Yeah. It's just like Morgan back there at the Federal Reserve. People want Morgan and Rockefeller. Everybody thought Morgan was fabulously wealthy. But when he died, they found out the truth was that about 17% of it was his. The rest of it was Rothschild. But you don't see Rothschild. The puppet masters, you don't see them.
We're passing around, let them see the book, the Tuttle Twins book, but that's the kids' version of The Creature of Jekyll Island, which he was just talking about, where the Federal Reserve was created.
But you see, again, all these things like this, which it all started with old Eustace Mullins back there years ago. Ed Griffin stole it all his book about the
Creature of Jekyll Island?
Yeah, Creature from Jekyll Island. He stole all that from Eustace Mullins. Ed Griffin is a movie producer, that kind of, and I'll quit right there. Anyway, he said in his book that he was trying to get this book done, get this message done in 300 pages. Couldn't be done. Ended up being 600. Well, you go read Eustace Mullins' book, and it's less than 200 pages and with full content. But oh well. Anyway, here's the thing I was talking about poisoning people's minds. And the easiest way you can poison people's minds is give them something. If you read my second book, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth, I've been a Christian since I was 9 years old. Anyway, the 10th chapter is entitled Out of Egypt and On to Babel, from slavery to slavery. And I'm just taking the fact that the Israelite nation became slaves for 420 years as a result of a government handout. You see, here's Joseph done that. You know the story, golly. I can't go into that. Anyway, he folks saved from the famine and so forth. Well, Pharaoh finds out that this is Joseph's family. Go back home and get daddy. Don't bring anything down. I'm going to give you the best part of Egypt. Ocean. If you ever take a government handout, it'll screw your mind up and you cannot think straight. See, that's the evil of tax qualified plans. You think that they're giving you something, and there's no way. Just for instance, when government creates a problem, onerous taxation, and then turns around and grants you an exception to the problem they created, aren't you just a little bit suspicious you've been manipulated? But what is everybody told? Maximize your 401k, maximize your tax qualified plan. Well, go ahead and be a slave, that's all. It doesn't have to be that way at all. See, I've been doing these seminars, I told you, all over the country, even in Canada. Several years ago, I was doing one in Southern California, Los Angeles area, Thousand Oaks area. That's a high rent district. Now, the sponsor there was Arcady Milgram. Arcady was Russian Jew. He came in 1989 with $100 in his pocket. That's all he could bring out of Russia. Done extremely well. Only discovered the life insurance about 10 years ago. he had 25 Russians there and 20 of us USA types.
Yes, sir, thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
about halfway through the seminar, I'm telling everybody what a peaceful, stress-free way of life it is when you get the banks out of your life. About that time, I told you I can get my people running. And I said to myself, good grief, what an opportunity. Right there in front of me is a lady doctor from Russia. She is a neurologist. I'm going to pick her brain right in front of her. I have no idea what that woman's going to say. She didn't know me, know her. I'm going to take a chance. Doctor, what part does stress play in medical malady? Her response, it all starts there. Hear that? It all starts there. So ask the group, in your life, in the life of your peers, what do you see as the biggest stress? And of course came back, money.
All right, so with that story, what would you say in your life, 87 years, what has been the most stressful thing that you've had to deal with?
Yeah, I guess it's when I discovered all this stuff and so forth and started trying to teach it to people, trying to find somebody that would listen. I started trying to teach this to small groups of about 18 to 20. And so I'd schedule Thursday night at 6 o'clock. And I'd get, say, 40 people with pretty good prospects. And 20 of them, they say that I'm going to be there and so forth. Well, it's time to start at 6 o'clock, and I would start calling them at 4. And every last one of them swore they're going to be there. There were several times when no one showed up. That's painful. Nobody will listen.
Most don't want to know the truth.
Yeah, you broke the code. Yeah. They don't want to believe they've been deceived.
They'd rather keep the government glasses on.
Oh, yeah. Either that or Austrian who did the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it that you say about people who think and all that? What's the quote?
What's it? Oh, yeah. Yeah, 5% of people think, 10% think that they think, and 85% would rather die than think.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah. It's true. It's true.
Any other thoughts you guys have? Question?
Do away with the television.
Not that one.
I can't get rid of this
That's a
thing.
screen, that's not a
Oh,
television.
okay.
That's an educational screen, yeah, that's not television. Television has screwed up more minds, I guess, than anybody. Learn to recognize nonsense. Yeah. I don't care who you are, you're gonna run into some people out there that will bless your life with superior thoughts. I call them superior seeds of thought. Well, you're looking for fertile soil to plant those seeds, okay? All right, so they're out there, they're inquisitive minds. Well, the stuff comes up and it looks real good, but you gotta understand something else. You're gonna get something besides those superior plants. Weeds. You didn't plant those weeds, but they're out there. Now, if you got a huge crop of weeds out there, you can't even see the superior plants. All you gotta do is just get rid of the weeds and everything stands out like sore thumb. It's there. Yeah. So just look around and find people that are wanting to learn, wanting to listen. Lead them. If you do. Yeah, it's like this little guy back in Massillon, Ohio. several years ago, he said, he emailed me, said, I read your book and I'm very interested and so forth. He says, I don't think I'm going to go to college. I think it's a waste of time. And so I started a dialogue with him over a period of time. Found out he was going to be a senior in high school coming up. I started feeding him books a little at a time and so forth. And finally we got him into Grove City College, Pennsylvania, which is a great place that I have high respect for it, and professors there. Anyway, after some time had passed, he asked me one time, why are you doing this? I said, son, I learned a long time ago, when you find somebody hungry, you're supposed to feed them. You have no choice. Sure, it's fun when you see from stuff. Well, he graduated with honors last spring. He got married to a beautiful young lady that he met in school, and so, oh, you can't get it better than that. You can't buy that kind of reward.
Nelson, got one more question for you.
Tell me.
Back to the thought of your dividend growing so much greater than your premium.
Mm-hmm.
Is there ever a point in your policies where you would stop paying the premium and just take the income from the policy?
Well, it could, but I'm trying to figure out why. Every policy should, and they're always going to pay off if you hang with them. Okay. You can't take in this stuff with you. Okay, so I've given away all the policies on my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. I've given away policies that I own on business people to my children, so forth. It's a great way to transfer property, but very favorable tax implications, so forth. Well, then the result of taxes is the result of free contract with other free people. And alluding to the quote tax benefits, I think is a mistake. Getting it into the hands of people that are dear to you, I think is the way to go. And the earlier you do it, the better.
So is the answer to your question, or is the answer to your question that you've taken policies that you were paying premiums on, and now you've given them to somebody else, a younger generation who still has income and they're paying the premiums, and they're going to reap the benefits from the payoff of those, right?
Well, just for instance, I told you back there about getting caught owing $500,000 in the real estate business, and then the lawyer bankrupted him with $300,000. Well, during the course of my life, I had a partner in the life insurance business, Mark Phillips. I had 2 policies on him, and I had $250,000 on this real estate guy that I had a partnership with. Both of those guys died on me. Well, the death benefit came in tax-free, and the sum of those 2 was $300,000. Well, didn't that cancel out my mistake with the lawyer? Huh? Well, I also bought life insurance on 3 other business partners in another project, $200,000 each. Well, they were my property and so forth. Well, I was trying to figure out what in the world to do with them, and it finally dawned on me that the ultimate thing to do is have it come out as endow as a death benefit. All right, a whole life 100 policy at age 100 of the person is insured is going to endow. All right, now each of these 3 guys are about 64 to 69. One of them 69, the other 2 about 64, I guess he is now. Now, I haven't been able to find one of them. I haven't seen a way to find him in over 25 years. But he's going to die someday. Well, if he doesn't die, it's going to endow. Well, so back in the 1st of July, I was going over everything with the 3 children and their spouses about, here's the plan here. And so I gave one to Debbie, my oldest daughter, gave one to Barry, one to David, my son-in-law. Well, the guys, if they endow, it's not going to be benefiting David and his family or Barry and his family. It's going to be somebody down the line, but who cares? It gives them something to work on there that kind of a starting place, I guess you might say, something like that. To never see a bank in your life. We don't, in my family, we haven't seen a bank in over 30 years.
So here's a kind of a parallel I see to this. A lot of these guys are real estate investors. I mean, in essence, equity in an insurance policy and equity in the house, you can make similar translations to it, right? You can borrow against it. Hopefully it's in a real estate property is going to appreciate, but we know it appreciates in an insurance policy. And so in essence, he's bought real estate outside of his family that is an appreciating asset that he can borrow against, and it's something that can be passed down tax-free, just like a piece of real estate. It's just a different way of thinking about the something we already know and already participating in.
Whatever you do out there is going to involve the concept of banking. You cannot get away from it. You should be the banker in everything that you do. But this isn't all.
Well, I'll let you eat a little bit and I'll talk.
Well,
That's nice.
Yeah, go ahead.
Some of you may have heard the story, but this is something I like to share just because how proud I am of them for doing it. But my wife's family has been the banker in our family in a lot of stuff. Like when I learned this concept in 2010, I shared it with my in-laws, and they took over the $600,000 debt that my wife's business had.
Yeah.
So she was paying Bank of America a little over $6,000 a month for a note on her business. And we ultimately took it over through them. They bought an insurance policy on my wife, and she's been paying them monthly payments back, which has become now, since they've now retired, has become the income source for them in retirement. But the cash flows that's come through that have just built back up for them to help us. We bought real estate, the 3 of our families together. There's been other business loans and other transactions that's happened, and it's just kind of, we're starting to see just the front edge of what he's been participating in for 34 years.
See, again, people, when I say we haven't seen a bank in over 30 years, they say, you don't have a checking account? Yeah, we got 2. But that's not banking, that's bookkeeping. Good grief. That's a bank correctly. And it's bookkeeping, that is all. Banking is loans.
Well, Nelson, we are grateful that you would come and meet with us, and what was supposed to be just us 3 or 4 hanging out and jabbing or whatever has turned into a great opportunity for other people to learn as well. So we want to do this again if you're not too busy.
Do I get my usual fee for this?
We might give you 2 sandwiches next time.
All right.
And 2 cups of coffee.
Double the fee.
All right. Well, I'm going to shut down the live feed for both of these right now. We did record so that we can have it available for people to go back if they need to. And we'll let you know when the next time is. Hopefully in a couple weeks.
All right.